Hello, 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 YouTube world. This is Miss Patti with For Your CNA, and I'm so excited to have you guys with me for our weekly live question and answer session. For those of you who are new, who don't know, we go live every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, where I answer all of your questions about CNA training and testing and workplace and whatever else you want to talk about while we're together here. So welcome. If this is your first time, thanks for joining. If you've joined us before, welcome back. So if you can put your put a little hello or a thumbs up or something in the chat, just let me know that you're here. That way I can welcome you. And go ahead and put your questions in the chat as well. And I'll get to those in just a few minutes. So for those of you who don't know how this runs, feel free to put your questions in. We'll get to those in just a little bit. But while we're waiting for everybody to come in and get settled and just kind of start working on the questions part of this, I always give a little mini lesson. And today is no exception. Today I've got a pretty cool lesson planned for you. That we're going to get into in just a few minutes. But while you guys are coming in, give me a hello, a thumbs up, a hi in the chat. Let me know that you're here. And I see we've got quite a few people here. Hi, Princess. Oh, good evening from the UAE. How wonderful. Wow, amazing. So yeah, we reach a very wide audience with this show. So thank you for joining us. Let's see here. I'm doing something new this week. I'm recording this. I'm hoping, that's why I'm kind of looking around to see. I've never recorded these, but I want to be able to use them for in-services later. So we're trying something new today. So keep your fingers crossed. Hopefully this goes pretty well. Hello, Ulwich. Jean, hi. My day is going fantastic. I love Thursdays because I get to come hang out with you guys. All right, so let's, please like and subscribe. I always forget to ask, but if you can give this video at the bottom a thumbs up on YouTube, that would be huge. And that's how YouTube kind of knows that you guys find this information valuable and helpful, and that way they'll show it to other people. So if you could just give me a YouTube thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. All right, so today we're going to talk about mobility. Hi, Jeffson. We're going to talk about mobility and how mobility actually is used to reduce complications. Now, if you've ever listened to me ever at all, you know that I preach the care plan, right? So CNAs follow the care plan, the whole care plan, and nothing but the care plan. That's right. So we know that this is an important part of what we do. In fact, it's the basis of what we do is follow the care plan. But I want to rewind just a little bit from the care plan and explain to you the nurse's thought process so that you understand when things show up on the care plan, why they're there. And mobility is one of those topics that I don't think gets enough attention, but more importantly, it's one that a lot of CNAs kind of skip over. And that's a real tragedy, because mobility is probably, honestly, the single most important nursing modality in healthcare. So it's one of those things you kind of read a little bit about it in a textbook. An instructor will probably just tell you a little bit about, ambulating or transferring or something like that. You know, bed rest means they can't get out of bed. You know the terms, but it's really important that you understand the concept behind the terms, because this can make or break a patient's recovery. So let me kind of explain what I mean as we go through this. So mobility, especially in in people that are recovering from an illness or an injury, mobility really is one of the most important factors to consider when we're talking about how to plan their care. So mobility itself is going to affect every single body system, every one. But I'm going to focus on a few of the key ones here that you are probably most familiar with, and you'll be able to see why mobility becomes really important when we're talking about planning a patient's care. Okay, so mobility affects the skin, it affects the respiratory system, it affects a patient's mental health, it affects the heart and the blood vessels, it affects digestion, it affects the lymphatic and immune systems, and it even affects the muscles. So it affects almost every single body system we have. Now, we don't really think about mobility a whole lot because we have it, right? So when I'm working at my desk, and I do a lot of things. I create all of these slides for you. I create graphics. I write the books. I create the online program. I have a lot of time in my chair. A lot of time. My bottom shows it, right? Because it's a little wide because I got a lot of time in the chair. So immobility affects me as well, right? We don't really think about immobility because we tend to be active. So even though I have a lot of chair time, when I get tired, I can get up, I can stretch my legs, I can walk, take the dog for a walk or walk to the kitchen to get a drink. I'm still able-bodied, so I'm handling my own mobility and trying to offset the effects of immobility myself because I have the ability to do that. But if for some reason I was unable to address my immobility myself, I'm going to need some help, because I know that being in one place for an extended amount of time is going to affect all of my body system. So I want to go through these one at a time to kind of explain to you some of the effects of mobility limitations on each one of these body systems. And I'm hoping that when you kind of put this whole big picture together, you'll start to see why mobility is so important in the care planning process. So mobility affects the skin, and this is probably the one that most people are familiar with. This is the one that most people go, oh yeah, I know that if somebody is immobile, they're at risk for bed sores. I know that. I learned that in class. I got it. No problem. This is the one most people are familiar with. But actually, mobility does a whole lot more than just affect the skin. So immobility can certainly lead to pressure sores, or what we know as bed sores, yes. And that's because as the body, because we're on planet Earth, right, we have gravity. So gravity is pulling everything down. So if this area, right, this area is my bottom or my back and I'm laying down, the world, the earth, is trying to pull the rest of my body weight up here down through that point. So whatever this is resting on, this area right here is going to have a lot of pressure applied to it. So that can squish blood vessels, which means I'm not getting good blood flow to the area. It can squish muscles, which means that they're not stretching, they're not moving, they're not able to retain their mobility. And it can even squish fluid into that space, and the fluid is unable to escape. So the effects of gravity on the body, the point of the body that's lowest, is pretty significant. Now, you already know this. You probably don't think you know it, but you already know it. If you ever stand for a long period of time, like right now I'm standing to talk to you guys, right? And I don't stand perfectly still. This would be like really weird if I just stood perfectly still for the next 45 minutes and didn't move a muscle. Be very weird. I'm not going to do that because my body doesn't like that. Because right now all of my body weight is being supported by the soles of my feet, which means my entire body weight is being pulled down to that point. So my body is unconsciously, my brain isn't even going to be aware of it, but my body is going to kind of shift its weight from one foot to the other. It's going to put my foot up onto an elevated surface and then back down. I'm going to be moving around. And if you go back and watch any of my videos, I move like, if you put me on double speed, I move like all over the place. It's so funny. And I didn't even realize how much I moved until I went back and looked at some of them. But we all do this. If you're standing for an extended period of time, you're going to kind of move around, shift your weight from one leg to another, lift your foot up, put it back down. You're moving around. Same thing when you're sitting. When you're sitting for an extended period of time, you're shuffling your feet, you're crossing and uncrossing your legs, you're kind of moving around in the chair, shifting from one side to the other, and that's all because of the pressure that's applied. Now, you're able to do that yourself. That's great. But my challenge to you is kind of pay attention to how much you move around, and that The reason that you move is all because of this, right? So what would happen if all of a sudden you weren't able to move around on your own? So how long can you go standing perfectly still in one place without moving? Probably not even 10 minutes before your muscles are going to get sore, your feet are going to hurt. If you stand perfectly still, you're probably not going to make it much longer than 10 minutes. And then your body is going to have to move somehow to try to overcome the effects of immobility. Now, we need to understand this, because if your patient can't, if your body is going to make you move, right, even without your permission, your body isn't going to ask you, hey, can I move now? It's just going to do it without your permission. So if you can't even make it 10 minutes completely immobile, what happens to a patient that can't move on their own and they have to go longer than 10 minutes? So that's the problem here. Your body is going to do this automatically because that's just what your body does. But if a patient isn't able to do it automatically, now we have to think about how can we compensate for that, and what happens if we don't. So the skin is one of the things that's going to be affected. And yes, pressure sores can certainly occur, but you know what? So can rashes, because the part of the body that's in contact with the bed or the chair or whatever is going to trap heat there, and that's going to make the patient sweat. And now we've got warm, dark, moist in that area, and we're setting ourselves up for, because we have a decrease in blood flow because those blood vessels are squished, we're setting ourselves up for rashes as well. So there's some effects of the skin. Now, pressure sores is the one you're most common with, or most familiar with, the most common one. Rashes can also occur, but it doesn't stop there. Now we have to look at the respiratory system. So how does immobility affect the lungs? Well, you actually, when you're upright, okay, right now when I'm upright, I have a lot of secretions in my lungs. So do you. We have fluid in there that helps things move, because fluid is a lubricant. So it helps my chest expand and contract. It helps the gas exchange. I have a lot of, there's a lot of good things happening here that allows me to breathe and talk and tell you this lesson. But a lot of those secretions, because I'm upright and liquids are heavy, a lot of those secretions are being pulled down toward the bottom of my lungs. That leaves the top part free for air exchange, okay? So if I'm standing up, I'm exchanging air a whole lot better. I'm getting rid of carbon dioxide and I'm bringing in oxygen. So if I'm stuck laying down and those secretions are kind of across the entire surface of my lungs, I'm not going to get as good of air exchange. So I'm not going to be able to blow off CO2 as well. I'm not going to be able to import O2 as well. I'm going to have trouble with that gas exchange. So that can affect the metabolic health of the patient. It can cause them to become much more acidic as that CO2 is retained. So this can have long-term metabolic consequences on the patient. But the secretions can also kind of tighten up, because they're stagnant. They're just kind of laying there. So it can cause the secretions to harden, and that is a term called atelectasis. You can also get pneumonia from all that excess fluid in the lungs, because every time you breathe out, you're breathing out a small amount of you're breathing out gases, but you're also breathing out a small amount of fluid as well, of liquid. So that can, I'm sorry, my new puppy is tripping me here. So that can affect, your ability to expel some of that fluid. You also, and that retaining that fluid can lead to pneumonia. You also are at increased risk of blood clots in the lungs as well, which is called a pulmonary embolism, when the blood clots form in your extremities and move to your lungs, or thromboembolism, thrombus, when they form in the lungs. So we actually need a certain amount of activity to get our heart rate up, to push the blood through the vessels so that the blood remains fluid and moves where it's supposed to go. Because anytime blood slows down or stops, it tends to clot. So this puts us at risk for clots. So we have this skin risk, we have this risk to our respiratory system, and then we end up with a risk to our mental health as well. Now, lots and lots of studies have shown this, and COVID was a huge study in the effects of immobility on mental health, because during COVID, a lot of our activities were reduced. People in long-term care didn't get to go to dining rooms. They basically sat in their room. So they weren't active. And this immobility led to a huge blow to mental health of those patients. So you end up with depression, decreased appetite. You can even have failure to thrive. If you are already suffering from a mental illness, it can exacerbate that mental illness because now you don't really have a good coping mechanism through mobility, right? Have you ever been mad? Have you ever been mad? I'm talking really, really, really mad. You generally need activity to burn off anger, right? To burn off a mad. So some of you slam cabinet doors, some of you go for a walk, some of you clean. Those are all activities that are designed to burn off negative emotions. So if you have no activity and you have negative emotions and no way to get rid of them, well, there's nothing to do with them. They're just going to fester in there, and that's not good. That is not good. So it can worsen existing mental illness. It can also worsen grief reactions as well. You guys following this? Does this make sense? All right, so now we're going to move on to the heart. So it's bad enough that we have skin issues, we have lung issues, we have mental health issues, and now we're going to get the heart involved in all of this because there is an effect on the heart for immobility. So somebody that's not moving around much, their heart isn't pumping very hard. And do you know what happens to a muscle that isn't used very much? It goes flaccid, limp. Well, the heart is one muscle. You don't want to go limp. We need that sucker in good shape to be able to pump the blood where it needs to go in the body. But that's what happens when somebody is immobile. Their heart, because it's not being exercised, it just kind of gets all floppy. And that means you have decreased blood flow to areas that need it. Now remember, we already had decreased oxygenation because of the lungs, and now we get decreased blood flow. So now we have circulatory issues. We're not getting good blood where it needs to go to heal whatever needs to heal. So now we have delayed healing. Does that make sense? Okay. You also have an increased risk of blood clot formation out in the blood vessels as well, like we talked about a few minutes ago. So then we have the digestive system. Now, this is probably the one that CNAs are going to dread the most. If you've got an immobile patient or somebody with limited mobility, they're going to have digestive issues, and part of that is probably going to lead to constipation because the way that the food moves through your belly, through your small intestines, your small intestine is a smooth muscle. It doesn't contract on its own. It actually needs external forces of your tummy muscles contracting and releasing to move the food through the small intestines. If you aren't active, if you aren't sitting up, laying down, walking, bending, stretching, that food is going to have a really hard time and really slow progress through your circulatory or your digestive system, and that can lead to constipation. Now, your patient is also at risk for dehydration because if they're immobile, they can't get up and get their own drinks. And chances are that staff isn't really encouraging fluids the way they should, primarily because the more fluid in, the more fluid out. If your patient's immobile, they're probably incontinent, which means you have to change them more. So out of staff convenience, a lot of our older mobility impaired patients are dehydrated simply because the staff doesn't want to deal with hydrating the patient and the effects of that. Now that's horrible. It's wrong. We shouldn't do that. We need to understand that that is the wrong answer to this problem, but we need to accept that or understand that that does happen. So your patient is at risk for dehydration. So everybody good with that? You also will have delayed stomach emptying. So your patients who are immobile, they're not going to be able to digest their food very well. They're going to feel full longer. So they're probably not going to eat very well. Their nutrition status is going to be impaired. So now you've got delayed nutrition, which will lead to delayed healing. And I mean, there's just like so many issues here. Now, if your patient is immobile in a lying down position, right? If they're bed bound, if they're lying down all the time, all of that stomach acid so right now I've got a stomach right here, and that stomach has acid in it because it's expecting food at some point, or it's digesting the food I ate for lunch, right? There's acid in there. And luckily, because I'm upright, that acid is a liquid, gravity's pulling it down, it's staying in my stomach where it belongs. Awesome. But if I'm laying down for all of my life, for every hour of every day, that stomach acid is not going to stay in the stomach. It's going to migrate up into my esophagus. And now I'm at risk for esophageal ulcers as well. So this goes from bad to worse to, horrible, right? So we have skin issues, we have lung issues, we have mental health issues, we have cardiac issues, we have digestive issues, and we're not done yet. Then we end up with problems with our lymphatic and immune systems, because both of these need mobility and activity to work properly. Now, your lymph system, this is a system that's kind of hard to explain, but think of it like the recycling center of your body. So you have fluid inside your arteries and veins. That fluid is blood. That blood is made up of cells and liquid. Now, when we get into a traffic jam, then cells stay in the vessels, but the liquid part, the plasma, tends to go out into the tissues to make more room for cells. So your body is constantly shifting fluid inside the vessels to outside the vessels. It's just this constant ballet of fluid. Inside vessels, inside tissues, inside vessels, inside tissues. Well, your lymphatic system is the system that's involved in gathering up that fluid from the tissues, putting it back into the vessels. So think of it like the recycling center of the body. Well, if you aren't active, this is not an active process. Your lymph system has no pumps in it. So it relies on your muscles to push fluid where it needs to go. If your muscles aren't engaged, that fluid doesn't go where it needs to go. So you end up with swelling. And you'll probably see this in a lot of your patients. You'll see swelling. Sometimes it's lower extremities. Sometimes it's the whole body. But the swelling is because the lymph system is not performing properly. Now, the lymph system is tied to your immune response. So it distributes a lot of the good, healthy immune cells that we work with. So it takes away waste products. So if your a lymph system isn't working well, your immune system is not working well. And if we have an immobile patient, they're not there by choice. They're immobile because of an illness or an injury. So they need their immune system to work. And if they're immobile, that immune system is not going to work properly unless we get involved. Does that make sense? All right. And then finally, we get to the muscles. Muscles are affected by immobility in a very big way because muscles, the saying, use it or lose it, is so true. If you aren't using your muscles, they're going to weaken. They might even shrink. That's called atrophy. And your joints, if you don't use your joints, the tendons actually shorten, and you can end up with contractures or decreased joint mobility. You can end up permanently disabled. You can end up permanently bedbound if somebody isn't moving you, because those muscles, and those joints and those tendons, if they're not active on a pretty regular basis, and that gets to a point of no return, we're not going to be able to fix it. So we have to understand that when a patient is immobile, there's going to be a whole lot on that care plan for this patient that addresses that immobility. Now, the problem is that CNAs aren't always aware of just how important these actions are. So they tend to skip over them and, in favor of doing things that are more nursey, like vital signs or something like that. If your patient is immobile, then you have to make sure you're following that care plan to a T, or every single one of these body systems is going to be affected. So we have to look at this from we're trying to prevent a problem outlook. Okay, so when we have an immobile patient, everything on that care plan is going to reflect an action we can take to prevent a problem in one of these areas. So what are some things that CNAs can do? Well, we can certainly encourage the patient to move as much as they're able to move. So if they can brush their own hair, give them a hairbrush. They can brush their own hair. This may seem very simple. It is. It's simple to you because you're mobile. But this, in somebody that has limited mobility, actually works a lot of the muscles. It also gets the patient sitting upright. So there's a lot of benefits to that. So whatever the patient can do for themselves, we're going to encourage them to do, even if it takes them longer. A lot of CNAs will insist on doing everything for the patient because they can get it done faster. That is the wrong approach, the absolutely wrong approach. Because remember, the more you're doing, the less they're doing, and that's making them more immobile with all of these complications. We can also encourage them to participate in activities. Now, this is huge because if a patient is participating in activities, they're generally either upright or somewhat active or moving in a way that they wouldn't normally move, which can help with their respiration, their cardiac, their mental health, their digestion, their lymphatic drainage, right? All of these body systems can be affected positively with activity. And this is why activity centers and long-term care are so important. Just a simple act of blowing bubbles can help. Or rolling a bowling ball along the floor can help, or, like a plastic bowling ball I'm talking about, can help. Painting, baking, right? There's so many things that are being done in an activity room that CNAs a lot of times will roll their eyes and go, oh my gosh, bingo again. Well, bingo is actually kind of important because it makes you pick something up, right? So you have dexterity. You're putting it, dabbing your bingo card. You're thinking about the numbers. You're interacting with others, right? There's so many benefits to that. And we have to remember that all of these actions, no matter how small, are helping to ward off one of these potential complications. Does that make sense? But the most important thing you can do is to ensure that you are following that care plan absolutely religiously. If the care plan says that you have to turn that patient every 2 hours around the clock, turn the patient every 2 hours around the clock. Don't let them sleep through the night. If it says that you've got to get the patient up out of bed and to the bathroom, but it's easier for you to just put an adult brief on them and tell them to go, you have to follow the care plan. Even we know it's easier for you to put a brief on them, but that's not what's best for the patient. So we have to understand that care plan is written for the patient's well-being, not for your convenience. So understand the importance of that care plan. Follow it religiously, because if you don't, the patient is going to have one or more of these complications. And you know what? It'll be your fault that patient isn't progressing. And that's a horrible thing to inflict on somebody else, right? Because of, for our own convenience. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense, guys. Does that make sense? All right, so let's see who's here, and let's see what you guys have to say. All right. Yes, Blue, mobility is so important. Even just getting the client out of the house for a short drive is a huge mood boost. Absolutely. Have you guys ever been bored? I mean, like totally bored, like your phone is dead, there's nothing on TV, you end up usually finding somebody and kind of picking a fight with them because you want some entertainment. People are hardwired to need distraction and entertainment. And that doesn't change with age, guys. It does not change with age. So remember, just as much as you need distraction and entertainment, so does your patient. You're absolutely right, Blue. Hi, Joey. Hi, Mimi. Hi, Helen. Hi, Christine. Hi, Jennifer. So Jennifer says, so do you have to chart everything you do with patients in assisted living and memory care facilities like you do in a nursing home or hospital? That's a great question, Jennifer, and I'm going to answer it by saying it depends. You need to follow the rules of the facility that you are working in. Some facilities in assisted living do not keep track of activities of daily living. Other facilities do. Some places, it's simply a check-off form. You know, I assisted the patient with a bath, I assisted the patient with feeding, I assisted the patient with light housekeeping, whatever. It's a check-off form. Other places are going to require long-form documentation where you actually write words. You need to follow the rules and procedures in the facility you are working at because they're all set up just a little bit differently. And that has to do with their licensing. Some assisted living facilities are true ALFs, and they are just there to provide basically minimal assistance. Others have a level 2. Others have a limited nursing provision. So every long-term care facility will have a different type of license depending on what services they provide. Each of those are going to require a different type of documentation based on the licensing that they have. So always, always, always go by what your facility is requiring. Helen says, I have a question. My question is, a CNA recording the 24-hour urine output of a patient with kidney issues, what 24-hour urine value would warrant a report to the nurse? 800, 1400, 1900, or 600? Oh, that's a good question. Our general rule of thumb, okay, in a healthy individual, general rule of thumb is 30 cc's of output per hour. General rule of thumb, okay? Now, of course, you're not awake all 24 hours, so 1800, right, would be pretty, it's 30 cc's per hour, but it's only, kind of awake hours that we judge, okay? So I would say 1800 to 2000 cc's is probably pretty accurate for healthy individuals. Now, that's going to change if your patient is having an IV, okay? If they're having additional fluids pumped in. It's going to change if your patient is on a diuretic. It's going to change if your patient has extensive kidney failure. It's going to change if your patient is on dialysis. It's going to change if your patient is on a liquid diet. So there's a lot of variables there, right? So it's going to be affected by your patient's habits, what they're taking in, by the treatment that's being offered, and by their conditions. So for me to answer that question, which value would you want to report to the nurse? My answer would be, what do they want to know? So if you are monitoring a 24-hour urine on a patient, then you need to report that 24-hour urine, and you need additional information like, do you want to be do you want this just documented, or do you want it to be reported directly to you if it falls below a certain amount, and if so, what is that amount? So the answer is it depends. What is the condition of the patient? What treatments are they on? I can't really answer those values that you're giving me right there. Looking at that right off the bat, I would tell you on a 24-hour urine, I would say 600 and 800 definitely need to be reported for sure. Absolutely. 1,400 probably needs to be reported too, unless the patient has a specific condition that I would think that's, that I would deem that that's pretty normal for that patient. 1,900 is probably okay. So it really kind of depends. I can't really answer that as precisely as you're looking for. Wise Mark says, hi, Miss Patti. Hi. I just want to say thank you so much for the instruction videos and all you do. I did my test yesterday and I passed. Oh, congratulations, Catherine from West Haven, Connecticut. We are so happy to welcome you into healthcare. Great job. Great job. Helen says, I don't know how to calculate the answer. Yeah, Helen, I can't give you any additional information on that as well. I would definitely, looking at those, if this is a multiple choice test, 600 cc's, obviously, because it's the lowest amount of output. Let's see here. Jennifer says, I worked on a memory care center years ago, maybe 20. I don't remember charting anything like meal intake, changing briefs, etc. Yeah, every facility is going to have a different way of charting, and it really depends on their licensing. For the most part, let me ask you, you're a pretty healthy individual. You probably don't record anywhere how many times you go to the bathroom, right? How many times you pee in the day. You probably don't write that down anywhere because you're a healthy individual. Most people in assisted living facility are healthy individuals. They just might need a little bit of help, like you would help your grandma or you would help your aunt. It's not medical care. It's not nursing care. It's just help with everyday activities. So we don't really need to chart that. So we wouldn't keep track of it. That's why I'm saying, Jennifer, that every place you work is going to have different reporting requirements. Helen says, Miss Patti, what is the difference between dysphagia and dysphasic? Well, the last two letters, okay? So IA, anything that ends in IA is a condition. Okay, so dysphagia is a condition. DYS means abnormal. PHAG means eating. And IA means conditions. So dysphagia is a abnormal, in this case, swallowing condition. So they have difficulty swallowing food. They have difficulty eating. They're at risk for aspiration. Dysphagic just is a adjective. So dysphagia is a noun. It describes a condition. Dysphagic is an adjective. Like that patient is dysphagic. It's describing the patient, the condition the patient has. Okay. Dee says, hi, I heard you say last session that you're coming out with a 5th book. I'm aiming to take the CNA exam during the fall. I have the 4th edition, but is it better to wait until the 5th one comes out? No, Dee, the 5th one isn't going to have a ton of changes in it. It's going to have a few, but the 4th edition will absolutely meet your needs. There's no need to upgrade to the 5th unless you want to. I am going to change a few things in there, and I'm going to include a new way of looking at the steps that are specific to the skills. So I have a new way of presenting that information. But overall, materially, the content is not changing over much. Okay, the content is the same. It's just a little bit different way of presenting it. Now, I am going to have some new lessons in the online program that's going to correspond. So that's where you're going to see most of the changes is in that online program. All right. Oh, my, you are awesome. Thank you so much. So my assistant has put all of our social media links there for you. Nini says, hey, my test is tomorrow. What would you suggest to be the best way to study skills? I'm really nervous and I'm worried I will freeze up. Thank you. Oh, that's a great question, Nini. My biggest suggestion to you is to follow the care plan. I mean, exactly. If that care plan tells you to stand on one leg, stand on one leg. It is that specific. Do what the care, of course, the care plan is not going to tell you to do that, but that's an example. Do what the care plan says. If the care plan tells you to do hand and nail care on one hand, just do hand and nail care on one hand. watch my videos. It'll show you how. It'll cover the principles that are involved in every single skill, but you want to follow that care plan. That's going to be the best piece of advice I can give you. Helen says, I'm anxiously waiting for the Tuesday quiz show. Awesome, Helen. I'm glad that you're going to join us. Yeah. Whoa. I'm sorry. My puppy. I am writing questions for that too and getting ready for it. So that's a really fun new activity. For those of you who haven't joined us, on every other Tuesday now, I do a quiz show that will go over 15 questions that you might see, similar questions that you might see on the state exam. You actually get involved. You type in your answer. It reads your answer. It goes onto a leaderboard. We give out prizes. I explain the questions and the answers. It's a lot of fun. So if you haven't joined us for it, give it a shot, because it is a lot of fun to participate in. Yes, Joey, I agree. Congratulations, Catherine. Great job. Are there any other questions, guys? Any other questions that I can answer for you while we're here? Any other questions? All right. So let's get to my favorite part of today's show. We get to congratulate all the people that passed the state exam and drop by my YouTube channel to let me know. So those of you who are getting ready to test, or if you've already tested, go onto my YouTube channel on any of my videos. Just pick one. I don't care which one, just pick one, but leave me a fresh comment, not a reply to somebody else's. I don't always get to see the replies. YouTube is funny about that. It doesn't always notify me of replies, but it does notify me when I get fresh comments. So put a fresh comment and let me know that you passed the state exam so we can congratulate you on an upcoming episode. If you're getting ready to test, let us know that as well, so we can give you some good vibes before you go test. That way we can make sure that you pass the test. So we want to give you good vibes. All right. So let's get to who passed. So this week we are going to congratulate Rudy Brown. Congratulations, Rudy. Jenna Sweeney just dropped by in the last hour to let us know that she passed the state exam. And Matthew Gonzalez also just a little while ago dropped by to let us know that he passed the state exam too. So all of you that passed, congratulations, including Catherine. Great job and welcome to healthcare. Now we got a couple people who are testing soon. So Sin La, testing soon. We're going to keep our fingers crossed. Maggie Graciano and John Duckworth. So good vibes out to all of you. You're going to do fantastic. We're going to keep our fingers crossed and send good vibes your way. Now we have a couple people who are awaiting results. So these are people that have tested, but they haven't found out yet whether they passed or not. So we're going to keep these people in our thoughts and hope that the right test results come through. So Sheila Brown, Lucy Spoldero, and Teshalee Wilson. So all of these people, we're right there with you, waiting and holding our breaths, and we hope to congratulate you on next week's episode. So if you did pass, make sure you drop by, give us that information in a fresh comment, and let us know so we can congratulate you on next week's episode. I hope you guys will consider joining us next week, Thursday at 3 p.m. We also have the game show coming up every other Tuesday at 11 a.m. So it won't be this coming Tuesday. It'll be the following Tuesday. And I start my classroom live sessions up on Monday. So Monday and Wednesday, starting this coming Monday and Wednesday from 9 to 1 Eastern for 4 weeks. We're starting a brand new class session. And if you want to get the wrap-up emails and access to the review sheets as well, so if you want to just join on YouTube and watch live, if you want access to all of the stuff that our students get in a wrap-up email, head over to our website. There's a little sign up for wrap-up emails link there. You can sign up and get the same information that my students get at the end of every class, and that may help you as well as you prepare for the test. I hope today helped you guys. I hope you found some value in this lesson today. So Jennifer says, is memory care considered nursing care? No, it's actually not. It's not considered nursing care. It's more along lines of custodial care, personal care. Okay, a little bit different. All right, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off because we're at the end of our time together. But thank you so much for joining me, and I really, really appreciate you spending your Thursday afternoon here with me as well. So until next time, guys, happy caregiving.